Hello, friends and family. Welcome back to the Sober is Dope podcast. I'm your host, Pop Buchanan, and I'm very excited to bring our special guest, Jane Zarse, to you today. I've been waiting a long time to do my interview with Jane, and Jane is an exceptional human being and a powerful force in the recovery community. Jane Zarse is the author and top social media influencer. She was born and raised in Lake Forest, Illinois. She graduated from Boston University on the Dean's List before acting in New York City and trading in Chicago. She spiraled into alcoholism before joining Alcoholics Anonymous and finding her way back. Sober and Pissed Off is the second book for Zarcy. Her first book, Love and Compassion is My Religion, a beginner's book into spirituality, is a guide for finding one's spiritual self. Zarcy's first book received excellent reviews and gained worldwide attention. She has built an impressive author platform with tens of thousands of people who are in recovery following her on social media and is a top 2% Twitter influencer. You can follow Jane on Twitter at Zarcy Jane and on Instagram at Jane Zarse. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, I am extremely excited to bring you our guest today, Jane Zarse. We intend to talk about God in recovery, God and spirituality, the importance of God in recovery, and her personal process on the recovery journey. And we're about to go live with Jane. So hold on while bringing our special guest. I'm doing great. I'm blessed. God is good, and I'm excited to talk to you today because I'm a fan of your work, and I love where you come from. Your genuine message is something that resonates with me deeply. So I would love to talk to you today and bring you on as my expert in the field of God and sobriety, so to say. Right. It's one thing to have a pastor or someone on, but it's also important to have people who actually thrive in recovery through the message of God. So I'm really excited today. So I'm happy. Did I wish you happy Easter online? I think I did.
Yes, you did. Yeah, how was your Easter? Good?
It was blessed. It was blessed. Right. It was really good. I was able to catch service, and the message was really good. And I really was in the spirit this year. I think I had a tough February, as you know very well, because I was supposed to record with you in February, and I got really sick. And out of nowhere, and it wasn't COVID related or anything. I just think I burnt out and I was working too hard. And I had got an infection in my ear that kind of affected my head, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't lay down. I was scared because I thought it was COVID, and then I was just doubting myself, and I just was like, I had migraines and fevers at the same time. I was running a fever for 6 days. It was like I thought I was gonna die. It was just a mess, and I think God was just like rebuilding me for something, because that was the end of a chapter, and God said I have to recalibrate you to get your body up to speed for everything that you got coming. So thank you for your support. So Easter for me was just like this aha moment of just starting over, using the resurrection as a symbol of a brand new start. How was your Easter?
No matter how grateful you were before your health crisis, you're so much more grateful now. I realize how many days I take my health for granted.
Right.
And then I get sick, and I'm like, Jane, every day, the first thing you've got to really thank God, I'm feeling good today.
Right.
I mean, I can see, I can hear, I'm not in chronic pain. That's a big deal, because we have those days when we don't feel good, and we take the ones that we do for granted. And sometimes when I feel good physically, I'll just start focusing on, if I'm not in the right headspace, I'll start focusing on the things I don't have instead of my physical health that I do have.
Correct.
And it really is where our focus goes.
Right.
And that's what God wants us to focus on, is what he can do through us and what he can do to us. And sometimes I feel like, in this journey, I've got so much work to do. I've got to figure this out. I need to do this more. I need to help more people. But sometimes you just need to be still and just know, just believe and receive.
Correct.
Because that's how I get my power, is just sitting still, knowing that I don't deserve it. I'm no different than anyone else, but I know that God loves me. I know that he saved me from an alcoholic death to be here for some reason. And I know that he wants me to to tell other people that how important the belief system is. If you don't believe, I mean, no matter how hard it is, and sometimes even as a believer, your belief can fluctuate. I had a period that I was going through, first with emotional sobriety. And a lot of times God takes you through things just so you can have compassion for the other people that are going through it. I was kind of, I was judgy, thinking, oh, that person's dry, or that person doesn't have the God connection. And then I went through a period where I didn't have that.
Wow.
And it makes you take a step back and think, who do you think you are, that your relationship with God is better than anybody else's? You are no one special.
Correct.
And just to know that it's available to anyone, and that if we don't, and you've got to believe the times you don't feel it. I think God tests us. Like, okay, I'm going to start the mystery of God. God's always going to be mysterious. We're not supposed to know everything. That's the beauty of the mystery of him.
Correct.
But just to, sometimes, all right, Jane, well, you're not going to feel me for the next couple of days. How are you going to behave? How are you going to, how are you going to still have that joy inside and be able to give that away if you're not feeling me? I think he tests us.
Right. Like in the story of Job, right? God, that was the great test. I mean, Job didn't lose faith despite, Job went through the most I think anyone could go through. He lost his family, health, or his wealth and everything, but he still maintained his faith. And I always remember that. And even when I was really sick, I said, you know what, God, I put it to you like this. I'm happy where I'm at now. And if this is my time, it's my time. I was being super melodramatic, but I was really sick. And, but I said, I made peace within a prayer deep within myself, and just was like, look, this is absolute. If it's my time, it's my time. I thank you, and I'm happy, and I'm good. And I had gratitude there. And the trick is having gratitude, love, and leaning into God when things are not favorable in your life. So I definitely agree with you there. I want to start off and go back just a little bit to give our audience some context. Can you take us on back to your origin story with recovery? Like, give us like the CNN version of your process in recovery. You talk about alcoholic dementia. You also talked about your physical ailments, having issues with your kidneys, and just, being totally displaced and being brought back to life, so to say, through the grace and mercy of others and God. Let us know how everything started in your alcohol journey.
Sure. I mean, like everybody else, it started real social, real fun. I felt that, to be one of the cool kids, growing up, God wasn't cool. Partying was cool. And I wanted to be considered cool. I wanted people to like me. I got my validation from other people. So it was really important to me, all the shallow stuff, what I wore, what I drove, who I hung out with, all that stuff that ideally we all outgrow someday. But for a while, that's when the alcohol, it worked for me, Pop. Like I felt like, I've got this going on. I can behave socially and comfortable around people with being altered, being buzzed. It made me make it all easier. So I didn't feel, I part of when I was a drunk, I cared so much what other people thought, and that's one of the reasons that got me to that point. So I went to prep school. I went to Boston University. I joined a sorority. I was real social in the Greek system. I was able to graduate Boston BU on the dean's list. So the wheels didn't fall off quite yet. I mean, and a lot of people would see me out because the bars close at 2:00 in Boston. So you could go to Chinatown and order cold tea and they'll give you Miller Lite, or you go to a fraternity house and, they'd have that keg going till 5 or 6 in the morning.
Right.
And people would see my grades and say, what are you doing? Are you sleeping with the dean? Like, how are you doing all of it? But I was able to pull it. It works for a while, especially when you're younger.
Correct.
And then after I graduated, I moved to New York and was doing the whole, I'm going to do some acting sort of thing. And that wasn't going anywhere. I was barking up the wrong tree. I just didn't know what else to do with my life. And since I didn't know what to do and so uncertain about my own identity, I really turned to the alcohol. So that's when I started drinking in the morning. That's when I went to a doctor and said, I think I'm having a heart attack. And he gave me a physical. He said, there's nothing wrong with you. I said, well, I'm having this panic disorder. It was at the beginning of daily detox. So then
Wow.
the drinking kept going. And then I moved to Chicago and I started trading my own money, which meant that I could keep the party going for a while. Because when you're around a bunch of misfits in the trading environment, like at the stock exchange, no one questions the beer before noon. You know, if you want to have a drink while you're trading because you got too many positions on, you know, everyone that's normal there. We're a bunch of misfits that corporate America wasn't really a right fit for us. Right. So when I was able to, you know, be drinking my own, be making my own money and drinking through my life, it was, money's a curse for the active alcoholic. Right. And then my mom died, and then I stopped trading, and then I started just drinking because I'd wake up in the morning and just, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe she was gone. I was in that pain funnel, and that's when I became unemployable. The wheels fell off. I was looking. I felt that I was unable to make it in this life. Like I didn't even know what to do. So everything progressed, and I got pregnant, and I was graced with a dry spell. I was able to not drink for my unborn child because I thought she was worth it. Right. I thought she was worth the love that I was unwilling to give myself. So all those changed behaviors of the not drinking and the eating well. And I started working a 9-to-5 job. And as soon as she was born, she was on the bottle, and so was mommy. And that's when I continued to drink, like the merry-go-round drinking again. It's every day, all day. And my dad stepped in because I was an unfit parent, and he took my child, and which was good because she was in better hands. And so I knew that if I wanted to be a mother, if she deserved to grow up with a mother, and if I deserved, I didn't think I deserved anything, but I knew she deserved better than what I was providing at that time, which was nothing. So I got sober to be a mom to my child. A lot of people say, "Oh, Jane, you have to get sober for yourself." I stayed sober for myself, but Pop, I got sober. I didn't think I was worth it. I got sober because the same way I was able to have a dry spell during my pregnancy, I thought she was worth it, not me.
Right.
You know?
She's an extension of you. I think a child is kind of like the exception to the rule when it comes to that, because a child is an extension of yourself. So you are technically getting sober for yourself when it's for the love of a child. So I commend you for that. And as we know, a lot of children grow up as alcoholics and with a lot of dysfunction because they're children of adult alcoholics or parental alcoholism. So that's a beautiful thing. And so when you decided to get sober for your daughter, what was your process? Was it just, you had this revelation? Was it overnight? Was it cold turkey? Did you go to AA? What was the process like there?
I went to AA, and it took me over a year to get 30 days.
Okay.
I'd have this chronic detoxing where my legs would shake so violently, they'd wake me up in the middle of the night. I'd have to go to the hospital for Ativan drips I get 16 days and drink. I finally got 30 days. And after I got 30 days, I drank again. And then it took me my last drunk, it lasted another 6 weeks. I couldn't put the drink down for another 6 weeks. And a lot of people think, oh, well, you must have been doing, people that have problems with drugs. I can relate because pain is pain. But this was pure alcoholism. I was a wino. I was wine for breakfast. Then it was whatever I could get my hands on. I would just drink it constantly, nonstop. And when you have a body that's dependent on it and a mind that's obsessed with it, I thought I was going to die a drunk. So I kept going back. There's something that I really don't like it when there's anybody that shows up high or drunk and they say that person needs to leave the meeting. Who needs the meeting more? Right, why is that person there? Because when I was getting messed up, and the last place I wanted to go was an AA meeting. But if you see somebody that's high and they're at a meeting, that's the most important person in the room, in my opinion.
Right.
So they didn't, we don't shoot our wounded. They said, keep coming back. And I honestly was me that they want me to keep coming back. And then nothing worked until I got into the book with a well-versed sponsor. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is based on the big book, the Bible.
Right.
And that's when the light went on for me. And that's when I started reading. And I also saw people living lives rewarding, free of alcohol. And I thought, maybe this could work for me. And
I love that. The big book is based on the big book, the Bible, right? And I love that. So the origins of Alcoholic Anonymous and the spirituality, some believe started with Roland H. and his meeting with Dr. Carl Jung.
Yeah.
And Dr. Carl Jung was talking about, we need a higher spirit, a higher spirit to conquer the spirit of the addiction. And
Right.
he called that spiritus contra spiritum. And he was using that as a framework of and which later inspired Bill W. to utilize faith in the Bible as the backbone for recovery
Yeah.
through the vital spiritual experience. And for me, I think that's extremely important. Just the term vital spiritual experience for me was something, just reading the term made a connection between my relationship with God and my sobriety. And it was so deep because I remember going back. My story begins with me getting on the floor in the middle of the street, totally crying to God, like, I'm done. I need help. The devil
Mhm.
captured me. Please, God, send every angel, send my parents, send my dad, send the ancestors. Like, I'm captured. I'm done. I'm in trouble. I was like serious. Like, it was a spiritual revelation that something is trying to kill me and take my spirit away. And I just felt at that moment something clicked. And I
Yeah.
saw everything clear, like, like in a movie, everything crystallized. I could see past, present, and future. And I just understood. I was content in my spirit. And that was my vital spiritual experience. From that point, I'm still living through that point 8 years later, right? And I
Well,
have
yeah.
no desire to drink. I don't think about it. I don't regret it. I don't think about, I mean, I think about the past, and the past is
Yeah.
in its own perspective, but I'm healed, so to say.
Are.
But it's a big community, and someone like you who's an author, you wrote the book Sober and Pissed Off, right? And me, I'm a podcast host, and we're people that, we're on the front line. We carry this message, but there's a large amount of people in the community who just can't make that connection with God, right? Who
Mhm.
just like, look, I want to talk about sobriety, but I don't want to deal with the 12 steps of that AA stuff of God. And I don't like alienating those people
I.
because it's
Yeah.
important, right? So I
Yeah.
tend to talk about even finding a higher power within yourself through
Mhm.
meditation, through creative ways of I also talk about looking into at your ancestors, so to say, not as a form of faith, because that could be
Mhm.
totally sacrilegious to some, as hardcore Catholics. Like, I could see my stepdad say no, no, no with that. But my brother is also a Catholic priest, so I'm lucky enough to come from a really big familiar background when it comes to faith. But I try to guide people gently and through the exploration of possible faith, either within their self, within family, within something they love. How do you attack that?
Well, I agree with you, especially in a first step meeting. When I first showed up and they started talking about God, it turned me off. I thought,
Okay.
oh, daunting. What? I just want to quit drinking. I'm drinking myself to death. I don't want to go to church. It's
Right.
a lot of the first step meetings when people first come. I don't want to shove God down their throat.
Right.
More revealed. But the truth is, there's no known cure for alcoholism or drug addiction. The only proven treatment for 80 plus years is spirituality.
Right.
So whatever spirituality is for them, if you don't want to use the God word, good
Correct.
order, an acronym for good orderly direction, or use the group, but they have to find a power greater than alcohol, or a power greater than the drug of their choice to begin with. You have to believe in something bigger than the thing that is killing you.
Right.
Hopefully we get them more towards higher power and the spirituality, but that takes time. It took time for me. It wasn't a light switch. Like I said, I was turned off initially, and now I feel, my relationship with God is just, it's everything. It's the most important thing in my life. If you said to me, you know what, Jane, you could live another 30 years, you could have be successful and be healthy, but you can no longer pray and you can no longer meditate. I wouldn't be able to go on. I mean,
Right.
that's that important to me. It's all encompassing for me. I can't, I, the truth is, without God, I could do nothing. I know that now. But for the people that come in and they don't want to hear that, they don't want to hear, I don't want to drink myself to death. I'm not here to find God. So that's why they have to just keep coming around and make them do, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the treatment center sayings that aren't in the book, like 90 and 90, but keep coming, but they do work. So if you,
Right.
like, I hid out in AA for 2 years as an insurer. Each meeting, I went to 3 meetings a day for 2 years. And each one of those meetings was an insurance policy for me down the line. But so tell people, you know what, you can work the steps mechanically. You can just, we'll love you till you can love yourself. You need love. If love is your higher power, let love be greater than your disease. But it's near impossible for people to hang out with people in recovery who have that love and have that spirituality, and you watch them. I watch these old timers that tell me, you know, I'd be freaking out about something. Jane, it's already okay. They were so spiritually mature, weren't afraid of death, weren't afraid of anything, because they had that knowing that God's got them.
Right.
That's what I wanted.
That's priceless. That is priceless.
Promote. And then eventually I started chasing the most spiritual meetings I could find, but I came in there not wanting to hear jack about God. I get it.
Right. Correct. Okay, so now the next thing I want to talk about, I want to go back a little bit, right? Because it's something that I didn't get to address. Your mom, right?
Yeah.
God bless her. I lost my father at 15.
Okay.
And later on, when I did the work and just tracing my trauma back to where it started with my father. It wasn't just my dad. It was relationships. It was a lot of other things, but it started with the death of my father. And when you were drinking and then found out your mom died, what I think happened was, we know mental health develops sometimes through loss, and especially a loss of a parent could really change your brain through neuroplasticity. And that process of dealing with the grief kind of can trigger mental health, which is depression, anxiety, and all of these things, chronic depression and stuff like that. Yeah. Because your neurotransmitter hormones just fall to an unhealthy level. You're drinking alcohol, which is a depressant. So was there let's talk about depression, loss, alcoholism at that time for your mom? Do you think that it increased the effects of the alcohol use, and were you experiencing depression?
Yes, I was depressed all the time. I didn't want to be here anymore. It was like I could physically feel my heart break inside. I mean, I physically felt just empty and shattered. And I was committing suicide in the installment plan. I knew I was drinking myself to death. I think that was I knew it. The goal was to stay drunk enough not to care. I mean, just not to care. And then, I mean, I really believe that if I didn't have my daughter, I would have died another alcoholic death. I didn't want to be here anymore. I felt nothing except sadness and loneliness and rejection and pain and grief. And there wasn't enough alcohol to make all that go away, but I tried to just drink. I wanted to erase myself.
Right.
And then when I was able to put the substance down, I also, got on my knees when I cried out to dead grandparents and everyone up there, please, please, please. That moment, that gift of desperation.
Right.
Got the book with a well-versed sponsor. And then my sponsor, they say women stick with women, men stick with men, but my sponsor was a gay man who worked at the steel mills in Gary, Indiana. And he would show up with nail polish and flamboyant. And he learned to just completely ignore the negative comments by other people. And I grew up in a North Shore suburb of Chicago where I cared so much about what people thought. I thought, wow, I could learn a lot from this guy.
Right.
And when he taught me about internal power, where I'm the one that's in control. I'm in control of what goes on up here. And what goes on up here is going to dictate my entire life. Right. And then having that knowing, God loves you, you're okay. When I started thinking about, when I told somebody that I finally had 6 months sober, and I knew it, and I didn't care if they believed me or not, when I knew what I thought was more important than what other people thought, that's when I knew I was getting somewhere.
Nice. You mentioned something that I love to talk about: existing and not living, and numbing and not feeling, right? So we had this thing where we stay numb. I think during your dealing with your mom, you went into a state of numbness. You didn't want to feel, right? But you was really hurting. And with addiction, we exist, but we're not living. Like, I always had the feeling like I was just like totally tapped out of reality. And I just felt isolated, like I was on this desolate island, just by myself, where I could see people around, but I wasn't really there. Like, I was can you talk to us about that numbing feeling and not feeling?
And numbing feeling, I was scared of my feelings. I was scared of sobering up and feeling all of those things that I was trying to numb. And I wasn't successfully numbing them because I was still miserable. It's not like I would, you know, have like 6 drinks and all of a sudden be happy all of a sudden. That wasn't even on the radar. It was just not wanting to be so sad. I was just so sad. And when we see people that are abusing alcohol or drugs, what I now see is they're just sad. They're just not to feel all that. So when getting sober and now being sober, not needing escapism and feeling sad and feeling scared sometimes or self-doubt, that's okay. And knowing that's okay. That's the part of the human experience to feel all those things.
Right.
I don't feel the need to, I was so scared of feeling any of those things without the comfort, the alcohol holding my hand through it. And then once you finally face it all, it's like, it's okay. It's good to be human. It's okay to be human. And I didn't want to be human. I was just, like I was just this zombie barely existing. That was it. Just a drunk zombie no one was home. And so people stopped taking my calls. People said, Jane, you were slurring your words. I couldn't even hear you. So my life became really myopic, and friends and family disappeared. Like, when you flip on a light, cockroaches scatter. That's the way at the end. The people in AA and God I think without them, I wouldn't know that that love was even real anymore, because I didn't feel it within myself for years.
Right. And I thinking back for most addicts, when it gets really bad and they're like super rock bottom, it's this thing in the world where people just feel like people do turn their backs. I mean, the families eventually just get they become numb. Yeah. They don't know what to do. And the addict can be very, very, and I'm going to speak straight here because I am an addict, so I could do that. I'm qualified to keep it real. But an addict could be very disruptive, annoying, and just kind of like troubling and dark. And it activates trauma in a lot of other people. So eventually they just have a shut off switch and then they scatter, like you said. But the problem is, when it's everyone, it's the worst thing for the addict. And that's why I try to let people know, like, if you're out there and someone in your family is really going through it, just try to really exercise patience, understand that it's a disease the person is dealing with. It's an illness, it's a sickness. It's somewhat accompanied by mental health automatically. They have this term called comorbid addiction or comorbidity, where we know that, a person could be experiencing co-occurring mental health alongside of the addiction. And for a lot of people, if you frame it differently, like, well, my loved one is dealing with chronic depression and sadness and anxiety, and maybe they're a little bipolar in some cases, and they're using alcohol somehow to self-medicate, it frames it, or drugs, it reframes it, right? And you can exercise a little bit more compassion, right? Which we love that word, compassion. Could we talk about gratitude on your journey? What does gratitude mean to you? Because you talk about how these people, AA and strangers, kind of like, embraced you, and you had gratitude for that and the love of others.
Yeah, well, I wasn't grateful for anything. It was pour me another drink. I thought everything was outside of myself. I was real needy at the end. Like, oh, if everybody would just come back and be nice to me and give me stuff, and I wouldn't be so lonely and poor and sick. I never got it, that it was all what was going on, that I could fix me, or other people or God could fix me, because I was that broken. But when I got to AA and I was taught, listen, this is all within you. You work this stuff. All this other stuff's going to take care of itself. Just trust us. Just trust us on this. And then when they turned, I started doing what they told me to do. Yeah. And then when you start feeling good inside, and I never felt good inside for years, the gratitude of that, like, wow, something's working. And the gratitude for not being sick. I was drinking around the clock. I thought, if I don't drink, I'm going to stroke out. So the gratitude of waking up and not having to reach for something out of fear that if I'm not putting alcohol in my system, I'm going to die that day, that crazy
Right.
fears. First it was just the gratitude of physically feeling good, and then the gratitude of just having love in my life, and then the gratitude of, wow, I'm in control of my own reality and my own universe. The keys to happiness aren't in someone else's pocket, they're in mine, and these people are showing me how to use them through the love of God. And
Mm.
I haven't looked back since.
I love that. I love that. Can we talk about how you talk about your health? Like, how did you rebuild your health life? You have a company called Global, right? And I saw a website that you was on
Oh,
Thrive.
I did they did something for my second book. It's not my
Oh, it's
website.
not okay. And you talk
But
about how,
I had, my kidneys were shutting down. I thought I was
yeah,
to live. I hadn't been to a dentist in, I don't know, 5-6 years. I was, all those unexplained bruises.
right,
So when I was able, I didn't know I was in worse shape when I sobered up, my mental health and my physical health. So
right.
what I would do is I would run each day. I would eat right. I would start taking vitamins. It didn't dawn on me to either start taking vitamins or using moisturizer till I had 90 days. That's how far
Okay.
gone I had 3 months, and thought, well, I should really start taking some vitamins. Maybe I should moisturize my skin. Because as a drunk, those things, part of the alcoholism is, it really affects the self-care, the self-love, if you will. There was no self-care. So just the gift of being able to care for myself mentally, thinking I should start caring for myself. Thank God my body reacted positively to that physically, where everything kind of rejuvenated. And I still have some moments of where my hands will shake and people think I'm nervous. I think that's just nerve damage from all the years of chronic detoxing. And I don't know if my intelligence quite is where it was before I started this journey, but I don't care. The fact that I know what's going on today, I know what day it is, I know I'm talking to you right now. The fact that I'm even aware,
Right.
I was oblivious for years. So just to be aware of my own behavior and not to have ended up with alcoholic dementia,
Yeah.
it's miraculous. It's
It
really
is.
miraculous that for both of us, that we didn't die, for all of us.
Right. We have our life, and that's so important. What's your sober date? And how much time do you have in?
9/15/09. My last drink was 9/14/09, but I didn't want to count a day that I was drinking as my sober date. It was
Right,
such
right,
a to go a full 24 hours without a drink. And
right.
so that's the day I celebrate. I mean, just I'm still in awe. It's been 11 and a half years. I'm still in awe of my sobriety. I'm still in awe that I can be around it. Like, the alcoholism, a twofold problem, the mental obsession, I want to drink, coupled with a physical allergy. The fact that if the biggest gift I ever got in my entire life, besides being turned on to God, but the biggest gift that I received knowledge wise was that mental obsession being gone. They said that's going to leave you. I said, you don't understand. I don't want to quit drinking if I'm going to be thinking about drinking all the time. That's still a life of hell. Like if I was going to be wanting to drink, all that sweaty, that I wanted, that shaky feeling. I thought sobriety was going to be like that. That's why I avoided it for.
Right. And it's not like that. Wow, look, I love this. Because I can relate. Isn't that mental obsession was insane? Oh my God. And I think that's the thing that people don't understand, like about the addict, is that you can't really control that because of the allergy. And the thing that got me was that's what I was worried about. And the only time that was explained properly was when I read the doctor's opinion in the AA, when he talked about the allergy of the addiction, and that is like you're allergic to it. And that's why you have this insatiable appetite to drink. And and I used to feel so terrible, and I didn't understand that was in relationship with my dopamine receptors and the dopamine in my brain and the science. And what we were craving was to fix a chemical imbalance in our brain, and that's high science. That's really extreme scientific ideas that we're trying to self-medicate on our own, and alcohol just keep impacting and hitting the problem harder and harder. You get this immediate relief, then once it wears off, you're back to the races. And I mean, that was crazy for me. Oh my God.
And I thought it would never go away.
Me too.
I was still thinking about alcohol the way I thought about alcohol. I would be drinking Chardonnay right now, or I would have died drunk.
Right,
I
right.
never thought it would stop. It was so relentless, that thought of you. I mean, it would always be, do I have enough? Do I have enough for tomorrow morning? What if I wake
Correct.
up not in the house? Will I be okay enough to go out and get some? Do I have enough money to go get some? I mean, it was like that. I thought it would
Right.
never keep.
It was like as if we could warehouse enough liquor for 20,000 years, we would, and to attempt to drink it all until
Oh
we
yeah,
died. It would be no like problem. We'll be happy and that's it. We'll just drink ourselves to death. And that's what happens to a lot of people. And that's why I want to talk about mercy. And I want the people that's listening, whether you have family in some places or, like, think about what we're saying and put yourself in the addict's shoes and really try to exercise some mercy. Because when you see that reality follow someone to the end, that's when you're outside and you see someone that's totally homeless and covered
yeah,
in filth and broken and just totally out of it. And then they're drinking still and you're judging them. And that person has a real serious illness. And we need to exercise mercy and compassion for the addicts and to break the stigma of addiction.
yeah.
We recently just lost a really spiritual artist, DMX. I know you heard, and this guy is extremely spiritual. Yeah, it was so sad. And he was talking about how someone that he trusts gave him crack at 14 years old. And you could see how he was trying to deal with that problem his whole life, and he finally lost the battle, but he won the war as far as his faith and his realization before he went. I mean, he said some powerful prayers, but he made peace with it. He said his truth, and now the world could look at addiction from a different perspective, from a different lens. And I think that's the gift that DMX has given us, that you could see how sometimes it torments the person to a point to where, it tries to attempt to take away everything good in them, but that DMX didn't let that happen. He maintained God, he maintained love, he told a story. And it's important.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, when they look at people in that position, oh, it's low moral character. They're just no self control. Lot of they're doing that to themselves. It's always going to be like that. Let's just stay away. And that happened to me. Nobody wanted to be around me, and a lot of people think it is low moral character. And then, and I started to think that too, like, oh my gosh, I'm just a terminal screw up. And then this older woman in AA said to me, Jane, you're not a bad person trying to get good, sweetheart. You're a sick person trying to get well. And
Nice.
that made me realize, wow, maybe I am worth it. Maybe, I'm accountable for my alcoholism. I needed to drink. I wanted to drink. I drank all those years. Everything that I did as a drunk, yes, I did that. But I was also really, really sick. And a lot of people just see the drunk or the addict as just, oh, wow, they're just a horrible, bad person. But we start seeing each other as wow, they're just really sick.
Right.
It's helped. And even with once I got my physical sobriety, just having some trouble with people in my life or people who also have addiction issues, and having that same woman say to me, Jane, and she's talking about me too at the time, she said, we're dealing with really sick people here. Have some love.
Right.
And that's what it is.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Can you tell us about your awesome book, Sober and Pissed Off? I love the title, and I think it really it talks to a lot of people's state of mind. And
sure. So I wrote that. I think I had 5 or 6 years sober at the time. I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't happy. I was in a relationship where my husband had this other woman he was talking to, or I just felt, really insecure about. Insecurity is a common denominator for alcoholic women. And sometimes that follows us even into sobriety, unfortunately. But I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy in my relationship. And I wasn't going to as many meetings. And, for a while, Pop, I was in that pink cloud, happy, joyous, and free, the fourth dimension. I'm feeling God all the time. That wasn't there. And so it really made me take a look at all the other people that I thought, oh, well, they're not as spiritual. I was one of those people. I think God takes us through things so we become the people, so we have compassion for the people that we don't really understand. And I was dry and I was miserable. And I was also doing half measures. It was prayer and meditation. So I really, really got into meditation at that point. And then I was able to address all the underlying issues in my life, all the underlying strife, like dealing with, the inner neglected child and things like that, where meditation gets you to the point where you can heal all those childhood wounds. You can, and you can feel safe within yourself. And I know I can take care of my 14-year-old daughter now. I know I can take care of my inner child, or whatever you want to call it. And I know I can take care of my 49-year-old self now. It gave me that back.
Right.
So just, a lot of times prayer and meditation, I was just half-assing it. So when I incorporated the meditation, it gave me my self-worth back. And so, and also I'm not scared to die. And when you feel that eternal love that you didn't, when you are very spiritual and constantly meditating, that's never going to go away. That's never going to die. So it made me realize that, there's so much more than what we see in front of us, or how people are treating us, or who's in our life. It's so much bigger than that. And I believe that I was given a second chance through grace and through mercy, and to get that light inside, and to show other people that, that I'm not special. They can have it too.
Right. How did you get into meditation, and what type of meditation, and what's your process like?
Well, it's my sponsor was meditated all the time. So I call him up about, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm going to get this opportunity or this. Did you meditate today, Jane?
Oh.
Call God first, then call me back. Okay, you called God. Now, did you meditate? Call me after you meditate. Early on.
I like that.
I had to do it. But there's a place near my house, a meditation center, where I went, and they do the subtraction method that came out in the mid-90s, where basically you learn to, throw away anything that doesn't serve you, that it's just thoughts. That it's
that. I never heard of that. I thought, you think you hear of it, you know it all, right? You've learned something new.
It's just thoughts. Like, this body's going to be gone. Everything's going to be gone. And all that's going to be left is, here, more importantly, here. So what's going on up here? These silly thoughts.
Right.
What I think about this or what I think about that isn't going to matter.
Right.
Get rid of them.
Right. Correct. The giraffe reading the newspaper in your mind is not really important at the time, right? Just let it go. I studied under the somewhat of the Vedic Transcendental area, where you kind of just focus and you kind of create this awareness of the thoughts that's coming and just let them pass. Because after a while, I think people can't get through that initial 5 to 7 minutes, that initial 5 to 7 where your mind is going crazy, but eventually it really calms down. Somewhere between 7 and 10 minutes, you start to really calm down, and those thoughts start to settle, and then you become more aware of yourself and that inner peace. And it's a beautiful process. I just think for most people, consistency is the issue. So I think it's one of those things you just have to be patient with, right? It may not happen overnight where you can find a consistent practice, but if you could get there, you'll start to reap the benefits of meditation.
And it changes your body physically and breathing the same way having a couple drinks did for me. It comes, a lot of times we're using the external stuff, the drugs or the alcohol, just to regulate our breathing and our thoughts, and just to, I remember pouring my first glass of wine and getting that, oh, it's all going to be okay feeling, when I was just really adding to the problem. But when I meditate now, I get that it's all going to be okay feeling, and I'm not adding to the problem.
And you're not.
Yeah.
Correct. I love it. And so I have this thing, a concept called the all-in approach. And where for me to find success, I had to do Alcoholics Anonymous, I had to meditate, I had to exercise, I had to watch the diet, I had to go to therapy and counseling. What's your take on, did you ever have to go to therapy? Was there ever any mental health aspect accompanying your addiction, or you just totally was good with the meditation and Alcoholics Anonymous?
To be candid, I probably needed it. I couldn't afford it.
Okay.
When I got sober, I didn't have any money, and I didn't start working for a while. I was hanging out in AA, and I was lucky enough to be, there was a friend in the program, and he was a long haul truck driver, and he allowed me and my daughter, I got her back after I had a year and a week without a drink, to stay at his house and watch his dog while he traveled. And, that's the way AA is. It really, it really is the kindness of strangers, just showing up and having people like, I still can't get over that people genuinely cared for me when I couldn't care for myself. So yeah, I probably did maybe need that extra help at that time.
Right.
But I really believe with the way like I said, I went to meetings for the first 2 years, and my relationship with God is such that I believe he can heal me anywhere that I hurt. If I have physical problems, emotional problems, mental problems, if you ask God, you will receive. You have to believe. You have to believe he's working in your life. The problem is I didn't have God in my life for years. I didn't believe that he was going to do anything for me. If you think, yeah, that's great, God's great, but he might do it, but he's not going to do it for me. He's not going to do it for me. No, well, that's exactly who he's going to do it for. Correct. But you got to believe in him, and you got to ask him. So yeah, I think I did have some real mental health stuff, and maybe I still struggle with some things here and there, but it's nothing that I can't handle today with my sobriety and God.
Correct. And people got to always recognize that that you deserve it. I think people sometimes don't believe that they deserve the love, or that they believe they've been hurt so much by people. They don't believe that it's some external force out there or some higher power that exists that could love them enough or will love them. But that's not true. You have to learn to love yourself, be patient with yourself. And I'm telling you, there is a God out there. There is a higher power that is solely dedicated to your well-being and loving you and being supportive to you. You just have to be open to that and know that you deserve it. And I had, with my recovery, I honestly I started to say, look, you deserve to live a normal life without this substance that's causing you so many issues. It was just always problems with with alcohol for me. And I remember the craziest thing is my mother told me at 12 years old, before I even thought about alcohol, Joseph, don't ever drink alcohol because you don't need it and you probably will be allergic to it. And what she was trying to say was that the way you are naturally is so powerful and so enough that alcohol is just going to hurt you. And I never understood that till I went all the way to my late 20s. It just destroyed a lot for me. Well, you know what? Today, we learned a lot, Jane, and thank you so much, because you put a real emphasis and perspective on God and grace and recovery. And I just really think that's important for anyone out there who may be struggling with addiction. Don't be afraid or rule out God or the possibility of God in your life. Whether you don't believe, whether you had a bad experience at church, whether you had a crazy parent, it doesn't matter. Don't take that off the table. That's the most important thing probably in your life, and you don't want to take it off the table.
Yeah. And don't think that, oh, well, maybe for them, but not for me, for Correct. You. Available. I have an all-loving, all-inclusive God that's available to anyone. All you have to do is ask. My God is big enough to wrap his arms around all of everybody, all of you. Just he's there. Just reach out. Just reach out and believe. And when you start to feel it, Pop, as you know, then it's just so much easier to believe. And then, you see them working, and you see things happening that you thought would never happen. And I think I think God uses screw ups like me to think, well, she was so far gone. I know AA isn't like horse racing, but a lot of people wrote me off. Like, it's okay, Jane. A lot of us don't, just don't make it. But I think God sometimes takes people, that you'd never think would be a God person. I didn't think, I thought I was too cool for God or this or that. And then I was too sick and too much self-loathing for God. And then it's anyone. It's just anyone that's open to it. And now I'm all about God.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Before we go, I want to just ask you one thing. Yeah. There's a lot of people who report that sometimes, and this is not me trying to attack AA. I'm a proponent for AA. I love AA. Yeah. But if someone has a bad experience, what do you advise them, and how should they handle it? Because some people go to a meeting and it may be the wrong day, the wrong time, and they may have this terrible experience and just write off AA. What would you say to that person to not give up?
And find another meeting and go to another meeting. Not all people are the same. Yeah. Some jerks will ruin a situation, but that's anywhere in life. Right. Like, you're not going to stop going to your favorite restaurant because, someone at the table next to you was rude one time.
Right.
It's just, we're everywhere. We're a worldwide organization, and just find a different meeting, find some different people. The good outweighs the bad.
The good outweighs the bad.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Hey, I always say in the beginning, I had to say on the podcast that Sober is Dope was not affiliate with AA just
Sure.
for
That's
but
fair.
I took it off because I didn't want to give anyone I went through every episode, but when I got to 200, I went back and I took that message off of every episode because honestly, although it's not affiliated, without AA, I wouldn't be here today. It's the place that brought it all together, right? My counselors did their work. My rehab did its work. But when I went to AA and I sat there and read that book, and it all clicked. And another thing I want people to understand is that you know how you get into something new, when you get into the novelty of sobriety, you want to read as much about it as possible. You want to just grab as much literature. You want to educate yourself because now you're doing this new thing called sobriety, and there's no better literature than the big book. The big book is like everything that you're ever going to need to know about recovery and sobriety and your addiction and the steps to take to overcome that addiction. So don't rule it out. And if you don't want to deal with the God in the 12 steps of AA, then try to identify the higher power within you, reframe it, and eventually you'll get there on your own, right?
Something higher, bigger than the drug of your choice. And a lot of people lived in the boonies, got sober just on that book alone.
Right.
But for me, when people say, yeah, Jane, can you talk about getting sober, but can you keep God out of it? Or can you keep AA out of it? No, because that's what worked for me. And that would be doing a disservice. Right. The truth is, God and AA are the only reason I'm still alive today. That's it.
Amen. I'm proud. Thank you so much for your honesty and for delivering such a stern message today. It's good and refreshing to speak to someone who chooses a side, chooses a way, and sticks to it. Where can people find you on social media, and how can people reach out to you and get more information?
Sure. Instagram at Jane. My last name is Zarse, spelled Zarse, Janezarse. Or at Twitter, it's reversed, it's inverted, at Zarcy Jane. So social media is a great way to get a hold of me, and my books are on Amazon.
I'm so proud of you. And what's new? What's new coming? You have a new book working. What's new? What's next for Jane?
Not at this time. I'm thinking about maybe next year. You know how it is when you start getting when like as you know, if you're creative, you feel something is put on your heart, and then it's like, oh boy, I got to get this out. Right. I have an idea or two at this time, but I haven't taken it any further than that. But you know what I mean when you start.
Yes, right. It's coming. It's bubbling up, and that inspiration is there. I see you. Well, thank you for all your work, Jane. You're an amazing force in the recovery community. I'm so happy we finally connected, and thank you for being patient. You waited for me to go through all of my ups and downs this last 2 months.
That's more important than anything else. You're back and you're feeling good.
Right. Thank you.
Honor. It was a real privilege. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. So thank you for the distinct honor.
You're welcome, and God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Sober is Dope. That's a wrap with our episode with Jane Zarse on the Sober is Dope podcast. We love you all. Go in peace, and God bless. And I'll catch you all on the other side.